What is up and hello guys, we are the Ayos Buhay Crew. It's your boy Malupate. With me today are editor Bugs Craigs and the man of the hour, Phenom. Today we are going to give our first impressions on the game Ruinarch. To be honest, it's one of the games that I'm not that updated onto it, or I'm not that accustomed, but it was given to us by the developers from Maxima Games and our friends from their publisher, Squeakyville Studio Incorporated. So huge shoutouts to Mr. Jan Michael Lim for giving us a chance to play this game at the early stages of it. So now, what is Ruinarch all about?
So, Ruinarch is an evil overlord simulator. It's essentially a sandbox game where you find different ways to ruin the lives of the villagers. So, it's something similar to RimWorld or other storytelling games, and the player is essentially given a toolbox, and what you do with these tools is entirely up to you. In this particular case, your goal is to kill the villagers, and the game gives you a lot of choices to do it. You can go at it directly or you can go at it indirectly. You can make your villagers fight each other or you can just send monsters to fight them. So as for the gameplay of Ruinarch, it is a sandbox simulator where the player is given different tools to mess with the villagers. Chief among these tools are the ability for the players to cast spells that directly affect the villagers, the ability to control where the villagers go, the ability to share different information to the villagers that allow them to have different reactions with other NPCs. The other things that the player can do are create buildings such as the Eye, which allows you to gather information on what the NPCs are doing. The Defiler, which allows you to create cultists out of disgruntled NPCs. And the Prison, which allows the player to torture the NPCs. There are other numerous buildings dotted around the landscape, such as temples, graveyards, that have a whole host of different creatures that the player can play with. But the main gist of the gameplay is depending really on what the player wants to do. They can be direct and just cast spells to kill the villagers. They can destroy their food to starve them, or they can mess with their relationships with one another and cause the villagers to kill themselves. In the gameplay we have created different scenarios such as a zombie invasion or infecting villagers with lycanthropy to make werewolves out of them. And sometimes when we have that pesky villager that seemingly has 2,000 hit points, we just drop them in a cave or summon a dragon to destroy the entire village. But really, the game gives you a lot of options to play around with, so it's up to the player to create their own fun.
Now, for the levels, there is a good sense of progression in them, but we actually recommend the players to do the tutorial first because you can get lost with all the tools that you can use. But the game gives you constant tips and to-do lists, so it is very user-friendly, and also kudos to the developers for actually putting Filipino references on the level names.
Actually, I was really surprised with the level names. It really caught me off guard that they are named after Filipino numbers in the Filipino
Una.
numerical system. So kudos to developers of the Maxima Games and Squeakyville Studio. So for the positive things to say about the game,
Yeah, the positives of the game, it's a complete sandbox, right? So apart from the quest of having to kill all the villagers, every other quest the player receives are more of like guidelines on what they could be doing to spice things up, or if a new feature is introduced to the player, it gives you a quick rundown on how it works. But apart from that, the player can utilize any means to kill the villagers. If you dream to ruin people's lives, this is the game for you. If you're a fan of God games and you want total control of the world, this is the game for you. And overall, the game has a promising premise, and judging from the updates that the team has been given and the roadmap that they posted on their website, it looks as if has a very promising future.
if you're a fan of God games, this one is quite unique actually. You know how other God games gives you the complete freedom on how to build your city or build your world into a nice world, but this one is complete opposite. Explore his creative side on how to be mischievous unto other people or the people in game. So here are the positive things that the Ayos Buhay crew completely agrees onto it, but we also saw some things that needs to be worked on.
So, seeing as the game just launched, well, there is a huge variety in the player actions, but the in game interactions of the different things the player can do might be shallow. Like, we can cast lightning on crop fields, but the fires don't really grow on their own. And it seems like the world is stagnant in how it progresses on its own. The player always needs to have an input to direct the game forward. The game doesn't really move forward on its own. And by the nature of it being an Overlord simulator, there's a lot of information happening on screen at once. Like, if you have 20 villagers, they're all having different interactions with one another. That's a whole lot of information given to the player. And there isn't really a friendly way to access all that information. You have a player log, but that's about it. And you're going to have to click through each individual player to get their information. One of the other things we notice is that the indirect actions the players can take, such as instigating feuds or trying to frame other players, are generally less effective compared to the direct means the player can take to kill them, such as dropping them into a pit of worms or just straight up dropping meteors on their houses or starving them to death. And we hope that in the future, the indirect methods of killing villagers will be further fleshed out.
Yeah, some of the features are actually a little bit lackluster at the moment. For example, the taming of monsters or breeding of monsters actually is a little bit lackluster for me because, for example, you dedicate your time and mana to breed some monsters and it can just be killed by one character in game.
Yeah, the balance might be a bit lacking, but I have faith that the developers can see it through. I mean, it's on a good path, right?
Yeah.
And one more thing is we hope that in future updates they'd make the world feel more alive. The world should feel like it grows independent of player actions, such as if I were to turn a villager into a cultist, I would want to see that cultist spread independent of what I tell them to do. And hopefully we can see such mechanics as the villagers giving birth and trying to expand their village or taking their own tiles rather than just each day feeling as if the villagers have a set list of chores to do and the player just has to disrupt those to kill them.
Alright, so for the overall conclusion and the final Ayos Buhay verdict for this game is, to be honest, the game is headed onto the right direction. And seeing the updates and the future plans for this game coming in from the developers is that it is really filled with potential. So overall, I would really recommend it. And it's just around $9 to $10 on Steam. But expect that this game doesn't feel complete as of the moment, but the overall feel that it wants to give or it wants to show you or what to make the player feel, it really gives you that already.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what the game has in store for us in the future. The $10 price tag is a justified price tag for where the game is now, but it being an early access game to those who might not be so sure or might not be totally into this genre, well, let's just have to wait and see for what the developers have in store for us. Their living roadmap looks very promising. And yeah, I'd like to play this game more in the future.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the first ever video game review of the Ayos Buhay Crew. Once again, thank you for Maxima Games and our friends from Squeaky Wool Studio for providing us the game. And you have heard everything, our thoughts and everything. If you like this video, if you like more contents like this, don't forget to hit that like button and that subscribe button down below. And also, feel free to comment what kind of games do you want us to review. Once again, it's your boy Melopate and the rest of the Ayos Buhay Crew signing out.